our country is the second most sleep deprived nation in the world.
I have to say, in a layman's term, the brain starts shrinking.
Irregular sleep patterns can also lead to mental and physiological changes in our body.
But your brain, it's very, very easy to change the neural connections.
Cognitively, I can focus better, I have better memory.
So if you go to office or a child going to a school and is presented with a new challenge, what would you do if you're sleep deprived? You don't even try to look at the challenge. Whereas one who has slept well and a good quality of sleep, it's not only the quantity, the way you see the challenge, the perspective itself changes.
Welcome to another episode on Dialogues with Inspiring Minds. And we are here to bring you amazing content on mental health, on how we can improve our wellness with experts in and around the field. Today, we have Dr. Akhila, a senior consultant radiologist who's going to help us focus on sleep and its association with brain and mental health. So, a warm welcome. Thank you so much for coming in here today. It's an honor to have you. We've heard so much about your experience and expertise and how you get into the details of intricate areas about somebody's physiology and probably identifying the root cause of anybody's illness, right? So, thank you so much for being a part of our program here today. But before anything else, you have a long list of degrees, which I have definitely not been able to by heart. So, take us through. Welcome once again.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this conversation, which is a very important step I feel. And I'm Dr. Akhila, and I'm consultant radiologist for Surgery Group of Hospitals. And I have done my MBBS from Sulya. And after that, I did my post graduation in radiology, DMRD from Government Medical College, Ballari. And after that, I did my FRCR from Royal College of Radiology, London. And I've been practicing since then for 14 years now. Yeah.
Wow. Inspiring. You look way younger than your experience. And we're definitely going to get more insight from your end. We have a very important program at Inspiron that we look at in terms of sleep and its impact on our overall health, which can be both mental health as well as physical health. We've also known, and research states, that our country is the second most sleep deprived nation in the world. We see that the statistics are just increasing and doubling down. Now, that makes it far the more important for us as experts to dwell into areas that affect everybody's daily living in life. With the digital era, with changing corporate lives, and the hustle culture that we all are coming into, we understand that we may all be sleeping because we need to rest. But the question is about the quality of sleep that we're all acquiring. And through this entire program, we want to get into the details of how it impacts both our mental health and our physical health. And with you, we would like to have the insights of what are the structural changes that the brain may experience when our sleep is deteriorating, or say sometimes we're waking up too early, we're not able to fall asleep, we have interrupted sleep patterns, or probably nightmares as well, right? Each of us experience different areas, and especially when we're stressed, we tend to not fall asleep. And maybe a lot of us have different coping methods or addictions. Now, that can range from doom scrolling, using a lot of technology, binge watching these Netflix shows, or probably just, lost and not trying to get the quality sleep because our thoughts are keeping us occupied, right? And we want to look back at what would you tell us about how is the brain structure affected when we have sleep deprived days?
So it's a very basic question. Sleep is a very, very basic thing which we need for sustenance of life, just like your food or your oxygen. Sleep is that required for your natural sustenance. So with this sleep deprivation becoming so common, it's easily we all know that functionally we get impaired. There'll be emotional dysregulation, mood swings, stress, anxiety, depression. But many people don't know that there are actual structural changes which happen in the brain. when there's prolonged sleep deprivation, is like somebody goes on night duties for so many years, we start seeing physical structural changes in the brain scans. There's, if I have to say in a layman's term, the brain starts shrinking. There is reduced gray matter in the brain, and that's what we call it as brain atrophy or neuroparenchymal atrophy. So that's a new thing that's been found, that sleep deprivation is associated with brain atrophy.
Okay. So, what happens to someone if they have brain atrophy?
So there is again which part of the brain is impaired. So we have different types of dementia which are coming up, and they're finding out new things on MRI, like Alzheimer's has a different type of structural changes. Again, prefrontal dementia, frontotemporal dementia will have different part of the brain affected. So this is still sleep deprivation is associated with generalized neuroparenchymal atrophy is right now what we have found, but this needs more studies to identify which part of the brain is exactly getting atrophied and what is the consequences of this atrophy.
Okay. Um, Very often we hear that because of these structural changes, it impacts our mood, our motivation, decision making, even problem solving, and emotional regulation, right? Uh, what are the brain structures that are involved in this process, and why do we have to pay heed to this?
So we have the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain which is involving the frontal lobes. And then we have smaller nuclei like amygdala, and then we have hippocampus. So these are some of the parts which are involved with fear and impulse regulation, emotional regulation. So usually when sleep deprivation, it affects these parts of the brain, and that's when we start experiencing emotional dysregulations, and then on a longer term we may experience stress, anxiety, depression. It depends on each person how we start coping and how we start reacting to these structural changes.
So while the brain is undergoing all the structural changes, we as psychologists have often observed that even if we do not sleep for 24 hours, somebody, with or disturbed sleep in the 24 hours, the very next natural day looks like a lot of grogginess,
Right.
irritability, lack of focus or concentration, right? I'm not able to regulate my emotions or even complete the task that I have in hand, which means I'm procrastinating as well. Right. So even in just 24 hours, if we see such visible behavioral changes within ourselves, uh, what is the impact it would cause on us if we do not treat sleep disorders?
So if I have to go to molecular level, then there are neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin which are involved in the sleep cycles. So we have multiple stages of sleep. We have the random eye movement sleep. That is, then we also have the non-REM sleep. So these occur in cycles during the whole night. So sometimes you might be sleeping for 7 to 8 hours without having some missed parts of the cycle, like you don't go into the deep cycle of the sleep. Then this will cause problems in your emotional regulation, or what you see the next day morning as don't get on my nerves, I'm on the edge. You get that feeling when you get up because of there is this regulation of all these neurotransmitters. And of course, we are not able to measure these neurotransmitters directly, but we have something called functional MRI, which uses blood oxygenation levels in the brain, which is indirectly measuring the dopamine and serotonin. So these have helped us understand that even a small subtle variations in these hormones can cause all these emotional dysregulations even in a short period of time. So over a period of time it becomes hyperactivated serotonin or dopamine levels, you know so getting into a sleep cycle itself becomes difficult on those days.
Sure. So, on longer days, stressful days, or irregular sleep patterns can also lead to mental and physiological changes in our body. Physiologically, we see that we might become more lethargic. We're far more easily exhausted. We're not in the present moment, so we're not mindful, right? And therefore, any sort of activity, example, somebody says, let's go for a walk, or it could be regular exercising, that begins to deteriorate with the person's body. But are there any other bodily parameters that we look at? Does it change our cortisol level? Does it change hormonal, like you already explained? Uh, are there any blood parameters that we also consider and look at?
There is no regular blood test that will show you this, but your energy levels itself will help you understand that the low energy levels are because of the sleep deprivations. So as I told you, dopamine. So this dopamine is like, short impulse acting. So many people find this dopamine in stress eating, binge eating, or binge Netflix watching, but actually exercise and walk, as you said, on a regular basis. That's what increases ecological dopamine.
Understood.
But as humans, we tend to lack the discipline, and we opt for shortcuts of getting this dopamine through either binge watching, reel scrolling, or Netflix watching,
And is that how now, not ecologically, but we have adapted to receiving this dopamine rush by swiping through doom scrolling, trying to find more interesting content that's just going to just keep me alert? Is that what's happening to all of us?
Yeah, dopamine is associated with keeping yourself alert and awakened state. That's what dopamine does. And then serotonin, it was previously believed that it is what is required to initiate sleep, but again they have found out that it's a dual nature. It inhibits REM sleep, whereas it is also helpful in initiating the sleep cycle. So it has a dual nature. Serotonin has a dual nature. So it's a very subtle balance of all these hormones. It's like a cocktail in the body that's going on, and any small changes, yeah, you're going to notice that in your regular daily activities.
And that's what keeps us hooked on and addicted to our gadgets, because now I've increased my tolerance window. Because now what used to keep me happy by that little toffee that I used to buy and get, versus I need to have at least 15 reels that I watch and only one that I like amongst all of that. Right? So our tolerance towards this excitement or the dopamine rush that we have has increased, and therefore we can't, consume more and more content, and that's where the period of addiction also begins.
Yeah, because body starts getting used to the dopamine, and when you're not doing that, you feel that lack, that there's no dopamine, I feel low energy. So again, you get back to that because it's very easily available. Everybody has a phone, everybody has an Instagram feed, everybody has this YouTube shorts which are easily available. So the level at which you get high starts increasing. So it goes on. Once you start with half an hour, after a week you maybe start doing it for an hour, and you never realize it's an hour.
Sure. And that's why once we start using gadgets, we do not fall asleep at all, simply because our optic nerve is activated. Our iris is first activated and stimulated because we have the digital screen in front of us. And now that also leads to emotional dysregulation because of the pituitary gland and the amygdala involved in this process. Is that so?
Yeah, see, once the dopamine is released, its duty is to keep you awake, and we are seeking dopamine. So it's a cycle. We don't get
It's a
sleep.
double-edged sword. You're
Yeah,
not
definitely.
sleeping,
Yeah,
and therefore you're on digital gadgets.
that's releasing dopamine, and then dopamine is again keeping you awake. That's a full
Therefore, we will
circle. Yeah,
always be in a loop, and
right,
we will never be able to come out of the addictions that keep us going.
right,
And that's why we also deteriorate our sleep health. Right?
right.
So, why is it important to sleep healthily? Which means we all sleep to rest.
Right.
But are we having quality sleep that's going to help us improve our bodily function? Why is it important for us to sleep?
So as I said to you, when the research has been done on we're using functional MRI. Functional MRI is where a certain person is performing a function, and then we see which part of the brain gets activated. So this has been used for the sleep study when the person is under sleep, and what does the brain do? That's what we are trying to study. And as I told you, during the REM sleep, that is your rapid eye movement sleep, it's almost the brain is in the awakened state. There is some processes, physiological process going on in the brain, like there are new neural connections which are being formed, and there is consolidation of the memory. The whole day you have undergone so many hundreds of events, but you don't want to remember all of them. You just want to remember two or three memories of the whole day. So the consolidation happens during that REM sleep, and you have learned some new skill today. So there are multiple neural connections that are being formed during your REM sleep. So your brain is active during your REM sleep. Whereas the non-REM sleep, it's the deep sleep when the brain goes into low activity. So that's when it's rejuvenating your physical body as well as your immune system. So even your immune system is related to your sleep because it needs rest, and it's getting rejuvenated during that non-REM sleep. So it's all important that we have both kinds of stages of sleep, REM and non-REM sleeps. Uh, so as I told you, when during REM sleep, and also there is physiological process where we are removing so many metabolic toxins from the brain. So they say that sleep deprivation, you can have accumulation of beta amyloid. So beta amyloid is the toxin which we want to remove, and it happens during sleep. So what happens if it accumulates in the brain? That's one of the precursor for your Alzheimer's dementia. You see so much increase in the number of Alzheimer's cases these days. And one of the precursor is accumulation of beta amyloid, and sleep deprivation has been associated with accumulation. So in a long term, yeah, it can lead to brain atrophy as well as your dementia and Alzheimer's.
While we're looking at that, we've often heard these terms called sleep reset or brain plasticity. Uh, what does that mean? If we sleep well, what does that mean? What can it do for us? What's the benefit?
So when I mean neuroplasticity, when you have a liver or a kidney, it doesn't change that easily. But your brain, it's very, very easy to change the neural connections. It's very easy to unlearn and relearn, although you may find it difficult, but structurally, it is easy because every minute, thousands of new neural connections are being formed in the brain without awareness or with awareness. So this neuroplasticity is an advantage. So we need to use it in a conscious way. So and all this neuroplasticity occurs when we are sleeping. As I told you, that neural connection formation or the memory consolidation, your long term memory which is formed is during the sleep. So when there is lack of sleep in a long term, you will have cognitive problems. You will have difficulty in learning new skills. You will have problems in unlearning and relearning some new set of skills and knowledge or anything you want to learn.
Okay, so learning and cognitive processes are definitely affected, but can also be enhanced. That's the good news. So, what you're telling me is that if we can change our habits, our routine, set in more discipline in our life, we have the control to bring about change in the way we function.
Right.
Yes. So, I can have physiological changes because I have far more energy than I would previously. Cognitively, I can focus better. I have better memory. My problem solving skills are, I can do it really well. I might become more creative as well because I'm more mindful and in the present. Emotionally, now, because like you already explained, the memory processing of the day occurs and the consolidation occurs, which means my emotional processing and regulation also improves to a far more extent, which means I will see the way far more differently.
Yeah. So if you go to office or a child going to a school and is presented with a new challenge, what would you do if you're sleep deprived? You don't even try to look at the challenge. Whereas one who has slept well and a good quality of sleep, it's not only the quantity, the way you see the challenge, the perspective itself changes. So once you see it in a different angle and a different perspective, you will be more capable of giving solutions or facing the challenge in a new light. So that's what sleep does to you.
Okay, sure. So we've often heard that the number of hours of sleep that we actually mandate and recommend is anywhere between 7 to 9 hours. Let's say 7 to 8 hours is the most recommended number of hours of sleep. We also see that somebody is a short sleeper, somebody who's okay with the 6 hours of sleep and is able to function to their fullest potential. We also have night owls who, probably stay up all night, but there are also people who are long sleepers, right? They need at least about 9 hours to be able to recover. So we have to, on ourselves, identify the patterns of what works best for us. And we also have tools and tests that we can take to understand our sleep patterns per se, right? But most often, a lot of people wake up in the middle of the night and have, disruptive sleep patterns because of nightmares and vivid dreams. Is there any change in the brain structure that occurs, or any neuroimaging techniques that talk to us about what happens then?
So during these nightmares, the brain doesn't know whether it's happening in real or it's your dream. So it activates the amygdala, which is related to your fear, and also hippocampus. So the brain thinks that is happening in real. So it gets activated, and that's when it starts projecting vivid dreams to you, and you start feeling that distress as if it's real. That's what happens in nightmares. Whereas your night paralysis, so your brain is activated, however, your body is still in that REM state. That is your rapid eye movement state, when the whole body, the muscles are loose, and the body is atonic. It's almost like paralysis, but the brain is active. So it wants to get up, but the body is in paralyzed stage. That's what we call it as sleep paralysis. So when this nightmares or night terrors happen over a longer period of time, this amygdala is in constant activation. It's ready to get triggered anytime. That constant, it's ready to fight at any point of time because of the constant activation during nightmares. So over a period of time, it becomes easily triggered.
Very often I hear clients coming with this and almost in the therapy session say, I don't know if it was my dream or if this happened in real, right? And that's precisely what you're talking about. But I'm sure with the hectic schedule that you have a routine and a hygiene with your sleep.
Yeah, I do have, but it's a learned skill uh, yeah, in my early 20s, it was very difficult, of course. But now I do have a schedule, and usually we sleep off by 9. I finish my dinner before 7:30, and then I'm a early riser. So by 6, I'm awake. I wouldn't say 5, yeah, but by 6, I'm awake, and I have a meditation after which, I get into my routine after that.
Right. So very interesting to see that your sleep hygiene and patterns are really working for you. You're an early riser, you're early to bed, and that helps you function to your fullest potential because I've also heard about your hectic schedules, and it's not easy to be the radiologist, right? The eye for detail, the eye for problem solving, and of course, managing a team comes with you also taking care of yourself. So the message we're all deriving here is you need to reset your sleep patterns. And when you invest in your sleep, you're going to have twice the returns back, right?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And it's not just the short term benefit that you will feel the energy next day. It's a long term process, and the schedule helps you in a longer term, uh, because with so much dementia and raising and all those things, yeah, sleep discipline is definitely a thing which you have to consider. It's not a maybe it's a must.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. What would be your last insight and input for all of us today?
So I think nowadays so much of uh, limelight is diet, all these keto diets and protein diets, no fat diets, and all those things. But nobody's talking about sleep. In fact, the working hours have been increasing. I think we need to set boundaries, and having a sleep routine, sleep discipline is as important as having your food habits or your me time, all those things. So I think sleep is a must, and it's your basic right, I feel.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful. We're certain that with the amount of knowledge and insight you've been able to give us, it helps us emphasize on the importance of quality sleep, right? It's not just sleeping, but it's the quality of sleep that you're able to gather. Thank you so much for being a part of our conversation today.
Thank you so much, Priyanka, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to come have a conversation with you.
It's been lovely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.